Today on the Wrestling Roundtable, UFC 151 and the injury epidemic throughout Zuffa and the state of TNA 2012. Welcome to the Wrestling Roundtable. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. I've been a fan of wrestling for 23 years, been a fan of MMA for 16, and that's what we're going to talk about here right at the top of the show. But introductions first, as always. Yes, we are back. Glad to have everyone back. But to my left, which is your right, it's the American Psycho, Alex Payne. He's been a wrestling fan of 24 years, a pro wrestler of 6.5, and you've been watching MMA for 16 years. That's a long time that we've been watching mixed martial arts. We've seen it grow over the years, but probably none more than this man, Anthony Garrity, to my right, which is your left. He's been a pro wrestling fan for 22 years, an MMA fan of 10, a diehard MMA fan. How you doing, Money?
Great. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you back. And then we turn to the Rod, Rodney LeConte. He's been a wrestling fan for 23 years, an MMA fan of 16, and you've got a lot of new things going on. What is the R14 initiative?
Well, R14 Creative, Eric, is the rebrand of my video company. I've been doing good past few years, but I've always been getting business through referrals. So now I figure now it's time for me to actually put some more effort and advertise it more and find my own work instead of work coming to me. I've got a lot of exciting projects coming up, including a roundtable documentary, a two-part documentary that will be covering the next two shows. So make sure you look out for that and follow us on Twitter.
If you do follow us on Twitter and Facebook, of course, and all the other social networking sites that we have, you probably saw that Rodney and I went to Bellator 74 in Atlantic City the other week. That was sick.
Insane. Talking about good seats, I mean, I figured that my company would get us some decent seats, but we were ringside, right behind Ricardo Almeida. We could have been commentating, that's how close we were.
We've been itching to get involved in MMA somehow. Haven't gotten in there quite yet, but we liked admiring the professionals that work live on MTV2. Got to meet Michael Williams afterwards, the ring announcer, and even Bjorn Rebney, the CEO of Bellator. We attended the press conference afterwards, and I got to ask a question about K1.
Yeah, it was really good stuff.
It was really cool. So if you saw the Wrestling Roundtable shirt on MTV2, that was us. But speaking of things coming up, you've got an event coming up, Alex Payne, on October 20th. You want to tell us about that?
Sideshow Pro Wrestling in Bridgeton, New Jersey. We're holding the first rounds of our Sideshow Pro title tournament. I'll be wrestling Ty Hagan, Tyler Veritas. He used to wrestle for CZW. It's been a match. Actually, it was supposed to be booked a couple of years ago, but this time we're actually getting together. I'm looking forward to that match, and I look forward to ripping his face off.
And I hope I'll be doing commentary then October 20th as well. Hey, I got a gig, finally.
There you go.
You got a gig.
It's better than tearing tickets in Rahway. But we want to talk about UFC 151, the event that never happened. Switching to mixed martial arts here, right at the top. And, okay, I know we don't tape all the time. Everyone's schedules is a little off, and we don't get to do shows necessarily all the time. So this is kind of old news, and a lot has been said about it. Maybe the issue is settled, but we didn't get to talk about it. And I wanted to because this has been a very passionate, very divisive
And we never
topic.
canceled the show.
Yes, we haven't. And this was the first time for Zuffa. Actually, a few weeks later, they canceled the Strikeforce show too, but I think that was more of a Showtime thing. But point is that this is kind of indicative of a bigger problem, and we'll get into that. But specifically for 151, of course, we know the story is that originally Dan Hendo Henderson was going to challenge John Jones for the light heavyweight title. Hendo was going through training with some injuries and didn't make it known to his bosses up until practically the last minute. So then they were scrambling for a replacement, and I think an aspect of this that people don't bring up is that they were scrambling for a replacement because most of those contenders had just fought on Fox a few weeks before. So it's not like they had a lot of people in reserve necessarily, and obviously because they went to Chael Sonnen, who hasn't even made the jump yet to light heavyweight from middleweight. He was going to, and now it's back on, to fight Forrest Griffin later in the year. So they went to Chael Sonnen and he was all about it. John Jones was not. And depending on whose side you're listening to, Jones either knew or didn't that the show would be canceled, but point is they didn't have a marketable main event in their eyes to replace that, so they canceled the event, and fingers are being pointed afterwards. Of course, we know Jon Jones had his meeting with Dana White before he finally fought in Toronto against Vitor Belfort, and they seem to be cool now, but I think that did a lot of damage to his reputation. And when it comes to 151 being canceled, whose fault do you think it is? Do you think it's Hendo's for not letting them know sooner and giving them more time? Do you think it's Jon Jones for not accepting the Chael Sonnen fight? Or do you think that it's Zuffa for not making sure the show must go on?
All three parties should be blamed at this. First, Dan Henderson. If he knew he was injured, he should have called Dana White and told him months before. Maybe if he had told him earlier, a bit more time to find another opponent. I also blame Jon Jones because you're the goddamn champion. You had no problem taking a fight on short notice 2 weeks before you fought Shogun for the belt. And at the same time, it's the UFC's fault because they had nothing else on the card that would make it as good to replace.
I'm sure they did everything in their power to make sure this goes on, because we don't know every single detail and every single phone call they made, because you know they wouldn't want to do this. Think of all the money they'd be losing out.
Refunds they have to give back out.
Refunds is just one aspect of
All the marketing.
let alone all
they're
the...
losing money on. Like, there's a giant business investment. When you market a main event and you put in weeks and time of advertisement, that's millions of dollars out of the drain.
Just in advertising alone.
Exactly.
Let
And
alone the
then
tickets, the building,
the building
merchandise.
itself, the merchandising that you're going to be packing into these trucks to take, like, you have so much time invested in this, and especially Hendo, who he's hurt. You should be telling the promoter, hey, I can't do this fight. Letting Dana know that we need a marketable main event, and I'll come back and I'll fight later.
But the aspect of it that bothers me, and that's why I fall on the side of I put more blame on Jon Jones than anyone else. I don't mean to be a company apologist, because as much of a UFC fan as I am, they do a lot of things I don't agree with. In this case, though, Jon Jones, and this is my problem with it, was already in training.
Yes.
Not only was he already in training, he was already in training for a wrestler, and one who had a big right hand that Chael Sonnen doesn't. So even though everyone seems to think, yeah, it would have been a walk in the park for Jon Jones, did Jon Jones really duck out and not want to risk losing? It was almost a Floyd Mayweather type move.
I don't think that was a problem for Jon Jones, because I think he's confident in himself and his abilities to know that he could have beaten Chael Sonnen, but he was just more concerned with him going back on his word, because he kept saying he didn't want to allow Chael Sonnen to talk himself into a title fight. And what happened? Chael Sonnen talked himself into a potential title fight. So he didn't want to risk being known as someone to go back on his word. I think that was the main issue there. It's not so much that he sees Chael Sonnen as a dangerous fighter, because Chael Sonnen is a dangerous fighter, but not one to give him as much problem as Dan Henderson.
Obviously, anyone who follows mixed martial arts would know Chael Sonnen did not earn this title shot. But don't you think this is extraordinary circumstances, extenuating circumstances? Because, like I said, all the other contenders, and Machida turned down the fight as well, didn't take the fight because they needed more time to train or whatever. Jon Jones was already in training, Sonnen was getting off the couch, and don't you think that kind of shows some disloyalty in a way? Anderson Silva was ready to jump at Stephan Bonnar or whatever when they needed to fill in the Brazil card
Well, in
coming
that
up.
case, UFC should jump at it. It's a money-making thing. They need to save their main event. They need to save their show, and the show should go on. They should have forced. If Chael Sonnen's going to step up, he probably naturally is at light heavyweight anyway. He's willing to go after the title. He's a guy who's marketable and who could promote that fight in a week or two's notice.
You would have only needed a week and he would have sold paper.
He would have easily,
Yeah.
easily enough. So you got the controversy. You could almost spin your who's the real bad guy in the situation. Is Jon Jones ducking him, or is the man's man trying to go after the title? Like, you should go for it. You should try to market that. You should try to make money on it.
Dana
and
White
you get
did.
out of it too if you really wanted to.
Dana White did a good job of making Jon Jones seem like the bad guy when there were a lot of other parties involved. I mean, Rashad Evans even said it best. Like, people are scared to death of Jon Jones. Like, there were other fighters that would rather quit Zuffa than to fight Jon Jones. So it's not easy to fight
Anderson
someone.
Silva is scared of Jon Jones.
Nobody would fight this guy on 8 weeks' notice, or 8 months, let alone 8 days. And maybe he would have fought other people, but just not Chael Sonnen. He said, this guy does not deserve for me to go and headline a pay-per-view and do business with this guy after he's talked so much trash. Why should I give him the opportunity for a belt that I fought for? And there are a lot of other things to be involved. Zuffa could have did what they can to push maybe another main event forward. There are a lot of different things. Henderson could have notified them sooner. I mean, we know that fighters never fight 100%, but it would be nice to give them a heads up.
If you're going to wait until a week before the fight to announce that you're injured, then you should just not say a word and fight injured and just pull the injury excuse that a lot of guys do after the fight, which Henderson has done before.
Yeah.
That's old school.
Yeah.
We didn't see guys like Randy Couture. I mean, granted, they didn't have the same schedule.
Yes.
Which is what's going to segue
Yes.
into the next aspect of it. But I do think it's funny that John Jones just recently signed with Nike and then didn't just do
Yes.
it.
Chael Sonnen was on ESPN. He said Nike just do nothing. The only person who looks best out of this whole situation is Chael Sonnen, because to the mainstream fans, John Jones didn't want to fight him. He was going to fight Chael Sonnen on 1 week's notice, and that last week is a media week. Chael Sonnen would have gotten maybe 1-2 training sessions in, if that.
But I just mentioned the way things used to be. Now, the way things used to be did involve a lot less shows. And that means that there's a lot less injuries necessarily. It's not like it's unheard of for people to pull out of a fight, but I think it is unheard of in these numbers. This is really like a fucking epidemic at this point. And just as a fan, I am getting pissed off. I put myself in the situation of what if I had bought tickets and taken time out of my schedule to get out of work, buy a ticket for the flight, get hotel, and do all this stuff to see that Hendo John Jones fight. Now, granted, at that point, you gotta fucking go anyway because you spent the money, but still, you've been in that situation when you went to Vegas to see what was originally supposed to be Brock and Mir, which ended up happening at 100, lucky for me. But you got to see Rashad and Leo Cheetah. So you've been in that situation before, and you know how pissed off you were. So this is happening in ridiculous numbers. So we talked about the schedule. Obviously, we know they signed with Fox in December. So do you think that is really the thing? That's what people keep harping on. They're running too many shows. They didn't have all the guys ready because they just had the Fox show and all those contenders had just fought.
But they have so many fighters in each division. You could look at some divisions and pick 5-6 fighters that don't even belong there. They gotta find someone. I don't think they're putting too many shows on.
They have a roster depth that they can pull off a number of shows, but like you said too, maybe it's the fact that they're trying to be overly aggressive and run too many shows, and they want to have all these marketable fights on there, and they have only so many named fighters at the moment that they want to build the main event. That could be the problem. They're trying to pin on them too much, or some guys just need to step up and become those fighters, become those promotions. Like Chael Sonnen has stepped up as a media personality that kind of turned into Tito Ortiz. Controversial. He talks a lot of shit. He makes it very known that he wants fights.
And he backs it up.
He backs it up.
He's good for business.
He's definitely for business. Maybe more guys need to be like that Dana White can depend on. He's controversial. He's a champion. He's this, that, and everything. And they can depend on those sort of fighters.
See, the thing is, you can put as much time and effort and money into scheduling these things. These guys can train. They can get prepared. As soon as the fight starts, it's out of their hands.
Exactly.
Because if we have a Fox 2 card where Charles Sonnen, who always delivers, and Michael Bisping are hugging the cage for 3 rounds like everyone else on that card, which sucked, then what else can they do? There's that intangible. It's not pro wrestling as much as we compare it because you can't script it that way. So what do you think is the solution here?
There really is no solution. We can sit there and talk about that, putting too many cards. Regardless, the fighters themselves individually are still having the same amount of fights they had 3 or 4 years ago. The main fighters had 3 or 4 times a year.
Well,
it's not like they're fighting every week or every other month
Right.
or anything like that. The UFC isn't putting as much stress on these fighters. I think now that the money is there, there's more sponsorships, these fighters have more power within themselves. They don't force themselves to fight injured because they need to pay the bills. I feel like there should be fines for main event fighters to pull out fights. That would force people to train smarter, whether it's wrestling or striking, whatever. I know sometimes silly injuries happen with Rashad Evans, but if you knew that there's going to be repercussion, it would really force you to change the way you train and other things you do and not drive motorcycles into cars and things like that.
There should be like a 4 weeks notice. At the very least, the promotional side can actually switch things up, and 4 weeks is enough time for a fighter to prepare.
Yeah, because even as an employee, what Dana White mentioned, he'd put his staff in overdrive, putting together packages for Chael Sonnen and John. Can you imagine editing that and realize it's going to go nowhere?
We're videographers, so we could tell how much work
I
they
probably would have
put in.
walked out of the company.
Motherfucker. But you did mention the insurance, and I think that might be a factor too, but we'll get into that more when we come back. Wrestling Roundtable continues after this. Welcome back to the Wrestling Roundtable. Joining the panel to my left, which is your right, first up is Orlando O'Neill. How have you been?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you back, as always. You've been a fan of 21 years of pro wrestling, but we're talking MMA now, and you've been a fan of 6 years, just like this man to my right, which is your left. He's in our chat room every Monday night during Raw. You still doing that on WrestlingRoundtable.com?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Been a fan of 6 years, like I said. Will Evan Brooks. Glad to have you back. And we were talking about the event that didn't happen, UFC 151, and specifically the injury bug that's been going on for a couple of years. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the injury bug really started going out of control once Zuffa started offering insurance coverage for their fighters. If they get hurt during a fight, if they get hurt before a fight in training, they're covered. Now, I'm all in favor of that, really. I think that's great that they're offering their fighters insurance. It's a great thing for the growth of mixed martial arts. But we see the effect it's kind of having where guys aren't fighting through injuries like they used to, and now fights are getting fucked up. This is going to affect business. Because like I said before, I was intimating if I put myself in the place of Jones and Hendo in that pay-per-view that didn't happen 151, well, now I'm applying that to the GSP Anderson Silva fight they keep pushing. That might actually happen next year if he gets past Condit. What
Or
happens?
if he fights Condit, because I still do not believe that fight is happening, and you heard it here first.
All right.
I'll be very, very surprised if that fight happens.
Okay, but supposing it is announced, now my first thought is, what if someone cancels? What if that happens? I don't want to
I
get
think
fucked.
it's at 80%. What if?
And-
I'll be surprised if GSP.
Fine, but point is, buy rates are down too. I mean, Sonnen and Silva too did great business, but we're not seeing them do the type of numbers they used to do. So I think a lot of this is because fans are losing faith in this. I know they're getting a lot of shows for free on FX, Fuel, and Fox and whatever, but I think them shilling out money every month now is being really affected by the injury bug. So what do you think the solution is? Rodney mentioned fines, and I think that's a very good idea to dissuade people, but do you think there's anything that could be done, or is it something completely out of their hands?
It's not completely out of their hands. The one thing I think they could do is regulate training hours on a weekly basis. Say like you're in a fourth week, you go and train, I don't know, 40 hours a week, and then the third week, 30 or 20. Regulate it, like lower it down. I mean, not saying they can't work out, but like train.
Yeah, but they have
like
no
goalie.
control over the training. You know,
Over
it's
how they
everyone.
train, right?
They
They,
control how you train. Like I'm gonna do kickboxing in the morning. I'm gonna run.
they can't tell guys what to train and how to train. If guys want to do more wrestling than striking, then
Yeah, but I'm
Zuffa
saying
can't say
regulate
that's
the
more
hours.
control.
I'm not saying regulate what they do, but regulate the hours. I'm not saying they can't like go out and run for like 2 hours and then work out in the gym. I'm talking actual bowling, kickboxing, or whatever, actual hardcore like fighting training. Working out you can do as much as you want, but actual training.
What about the insurance aspect of it? Do you think they should take it away, or is
No,
that's something they need
think-
to figure out?
I think they should keep it, but there should also be, say, a 45-day timetable of where the fighter gets injured. Within 45 days of the fight, he has to pay a fine. But if he lets the company know 45 days ahead of time, that should give them enough time to find a replacement and the fighter doesn't have to get fined.
I think that's a good idea, but I feel like it should apply for like main eventers, because if someone on the Facebook card pulls out, then
they can find somebody just
they
like
can
that.
find somebody. But this whole thing is, it's getting so ridiculous, it's almost funny.
It's like wrestler deaths. How we weren't surprised when a wrestler would die every other week in 2002 or whatever it was. Now we're not surprised when someone gets hurt.
Yeah, like when I heard about Frank Mir, I started laughing. I was like, at this point, I would just love to be in the room when they get these calls to see if they either throwing mugs across the wall
They're
or
probably like,
just like
okay.
laughing. Or
The
just,
team was like, I'm not picking up the phone.
or just like
No, I'm
having
not
no
doing it.
reaction. At this point, I don't know if they'd even have a reaction. Like, oh, another fighter injured.
I love when he gets asked these sort of questions at the post-fight press conference. He'll just be like, every day when I wake up, it's a soap opera. Every day it's drama.
Well, you know, maybe
Yeah.
another thing they should do it, maybe treat more like Bellator does. Actually have a list of standings of where guys are. So if the next guy gets injured, all right, who's the next guy on the list?
A
I
ring
mean,
system.
I think
Yeah, instead
that's
of
an unofficial ranking system.
Yeah, but then what always says, I put the fights on people want to see, which is cool and all, but it'd be nice to see some kind of standings where you can go to the next guy down the list.
UFC tonight would have standings of different weight divisions too.
But I don't think those are official.
They're not official. It's hard to say.
But when it comes to the ranking system, though, if that's the case, if they had a ranking system, they might not be able to do stuff like Brock Lesnar getting a title shot after one win against Heath Herring.
Yeah, it would make
that's another
make
conversation.
this injury bug epidemic, you could call it,
Right.
a lot easier to manage.
Well, this has affected almost every pay-per-view coming up. Almost. The one in Calgary that just happened with Faber and Barao that had every fight, I think, at one point changed. I thought that was the last straw. And then John Jones in 151 happened, and I tried tweeting at Dana White at Rest Roundtable, W-R-E-S-T Roundtable, that's our official Twitter. And I haven't gotten a response yet, but not like he needs to hear it from me, of course, because
Right,
he deals
sure
with
he
it
is.
every day. But I think there needs to be a fighter summit. You know, they have a fighter summit every year to talk contracts and social media with everybody. This, I think, should be like an emergency
It's
fighter
really-
subject number
Well,
one.
sometimes it takes something truly drastic for things to change. Like with the replacement refs. They had that horrible call on Monday Night Football. Next week, the refs are back.
That's the best.
So maybe it took something like this to cancel an entire card for them to say, we gotta look into this, something's gotta change.
It can't be much more drastic than what we've seen already.
What sucks about this thing too is that Dana said that him and his partners have so much planned for the UFC that it's not even near where they want it to be.
Mhm.
But these injuries are really taking themselves like out of the business. Where he said he has 2 hours a day to do what he really wants to do, to drive this machine forward.
Mhm.
And all these injuries are just almost stopping the growth that
Oh, yeah.
UFC really has.
It's definitely affected business, I think, as we've seen. And hell, what if their first card in China next month with Fuel, Kung Lee pulls out of the main event?
Oh, yeah.
Very, very possible. Hey, I said my piece about GSP.
Yeah.
My favorite fighter, but I don't see him happening.
That may be so, but we want to connect it to what's going to come up on Saturday. We're taping on Sunday before, but UFC 153 in Brazil, because yet again, within an hour of each other was Jose Aldo and Quentin Rampage Jackson pulling out. And Frankie Edgar was a replacement in and of itself. So the whole
That
main
would've been
event
awesome.
gone. And then
That's a super fight, potential super fight.
and Frankie Edgar really didn't earn that title shot either. He hadn't dropped a featherweight yet. So yet another
Would
situation.
have been
where-
his 7th title fight in a row.
Right, and that out the window too. Anderson Silva doing the opposite of John Jones and saying, I'm going to step up for the company that made me rich. And now it's going to be Stephan Bonnar pretty much coming out of retirement in this big fight, Anderson Silva. What do you think is going to go down? Is it going to be the biggest upset that they've been marketing it as a spin?
Silva's gonna kick his ass in the first round and end the fight right there. I like Bonner, but he couldn't beat Griffin, and Griffin got embarrassed by Silva.
I think this is going to be an entertaining fight. People want to say this is almost a joke, but when people say that, when Tyson was killing all these no-names in the 80s and 90s, no. Stephan Bonnar always comes to fight. He had never been stopped. He's only lost to former champions. And he's going to come and give Silva a great fight. I think it's going to be more entertaining than people think.
Well, of course, the first impression is what everyone thinks, walk in the park for Anderson Silva. But that's the whole point of marketing. How are we going to spin this and try and get people to get sold on the pay-per-view? And then when they go, we'll either see a knockout or the biggest upset, and unlike pro wrestling, anything can really happen in mixed martial
as
arts.
we've been a part
And
of.
that little aspect, ooh, I don't like that. I don't want to see Anderson Silva's long winning streak end. What do you think's going to happen?
I see this fight as more of an exhibition for Anderson. But I do.
It's a fun fight.
It is,
It's a
but
fun
I think-
fight.
I think Silva will stretch it out to maybe the second or third round just to give the fans their money's worth, and he's fighting in Brazil, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, Bonner's going to
Yeah,
stop.
Bonner's gonna try his best, but I don't think.
I think it's
he'll
going to
get
be a great song and dance on Bonner's
Yeah.
MMA exit.
I had a tweet recently, and I told you to follow us on Twitter. I won't plug it again necessarily, but I said Eric Silva is the Silva that GSP should be worried about, not Anderson. Because I think Eric Silva is a world-class welterweight. We've seen him only a few times in UFC, and he's going to stop John Fitch really quick, I think. John Fitch was the last time he finished a fight, and he got finished recently too. So I'm really looking forward to Eric Silva coming back. But Glover Teixeira is someone that MMA fans have been talking about a lot. He was originally going to be Rampage's last opponent on
Dana's
Rampage's
been
deal.
pushing him big time
Right.
also.
What do you think's going to happen when he faces Fabio Maldonado?
I see Teixeira pulling it out. I think he would have pulled it out against Rampage, since Rampage is on decline, and that's another one that we've seen hit the injury bug and stepping out. But yeah, I do see Teixeira going over and putting himself in the top 5 or 6 in the light heavyweight division.
Hopefully he lives up to the hype better than Hector Lombard will.
I agree, but I don't think he'll be put in the top 5 or 6. I think he still has to face a bigger name. If he finished Rampage, I think he definitely would have been in those talks. Yeah, he's only had a very few fights in UFC, but it depends on if he finishes them and how he performs.
Plus, we're going to see Big Nog coming back, Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira coming back from getting his arm snapped in half. It's funny how the Kimura, which Frank Mir did to Big Nog, is being done by Brock Lesnar in pro wrestling now. And he's got the legitimacy from everyone knows he's a UFC champ. But he never even so much as even attempted a Kimura in any real fight he had. But we've seen what the Kimura can legit do if you've seen the x-rays. And that's a very big injury to have, especially for someone in the twilight of the career like Big Nog pretty much is. like Rampage, like you mentioned. But Big Nog coming back against Dave Herman, looking forward to that. And if you're watching this before UFC 153, that means I have not slept at all this week getting this show edited together and online before UFC 153.
Big Nog's gotta take it.
All right then.
And hey, all you bettors out there, Anderson Silva's a minus 1350 underdog. So if you're gonna put money on any fight, it'll be this one.
All right then. Well, we're going to move on to pro wrestling, and we're going to talk about the state of TNA 2012 when we come back. Wrestling Roundtable continues after this. I don't know what this is, but this will be something.
Rolling. 15?
10. 10 for this one. Okay, so we're all going? All right.
How do you have odds on a fight?
A little over, right?
Yeah, like,
Minus not too bad. $100.
what does it mean, like minus 1350? Like, what do you? How do you?
So that means if Bonnar loses, you win $13,000.
Anthony,
Okay.
I got you in on this one.
It's win a lot, but no, but there are different ones. Like I won money when Frankie beat BJ because Frankie was the underdog. So he was like a minus. I don't have anything. 350 or something. So you'd have to win $100. You'd have like for BJ Penn. If he's a minus 350, you'd have to bet $350 on BJ to win $100.
Yeah, no, you're good.
So if you
I know
know.
how odds are. I just was trying to figure out how you fight.
But in yeah, because well now that Bulldog's gone, we should do the Bulldog. But they have different odds for the different outcomes of the fights. Like Anderson's probably just a
It's
win.
like 2 to 1 odds if he like knocks him out. 3 to 1 if he submits.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And for like Bonnar submitting Anderson, I can imagine. I can imagine the odds.
Has Bonnar ever submitted anyone?
All right, you're on.
I'm not sure.
To Eric or you don't?
Wait. Second.
I mean, I like Bonnar a lot. He doesn't come to fight. This is Anderson Silva we're talking to, though.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be a fun fight.
Oh, okay, Mysterio. That's fine.
Yeah, I went to WrestleMania 23, and he was injured, so good time.
Oh shit.
Could you recognize him? Doesn't matter.
It's like yay high.
Yeah, you recognize him.
He still looks like he's totally towered
over.
Yeah,
There's a picture of him.
yeah, but he's like cock diesel.
Yeah.
Cock Diesel?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an excellent expression.
I'm unfamiliar.
You know what's weird? Like when you look at him when he was young, he was so skinny and small. And now he's a little bit wider.
135
Got caught
pounds
on the
and
juice for a while.
Yeah, that's why.
Got caught on the juice in like 2006.
They were all doing juice in like 2002 and 03.
Juice. And we're rolling. Alright, baby, time to roll.